Why most people quit too early. Good morning, everyone. Let me start with a question. Have you ever started something with a fire in your heart, only to let it fizzle out a few weeks later? Maybe it was a business idea, a fitness goal, a relationship, a dream. You were excited, inspired, you even told your friends about it, and then life got hard, the results didn't show, you got tired, so you quit. Here's the thing, you're not alone. Most people quit too early. But not because they're lazy, not because they lack discipline. Most people quit because they lose sight of the reason they started. Let me tell you a story. In 2009, I published a book called Start With Why. It wasn't an instant bestseller. In fact, for the first few months, it didn't sell well at all. I was doing small talks, speaking at tiny events, sometimes for free. There were moments I thought, maybe this isn't working, maybe I should stop. But every time I felt like giving up, I remembered why I started. Most people don't quit because they're weak. They quit because they lose sight of why they started in the first place. It's easy to assume that when someone gives up on a dream or walks away from a goal, it's due to a lack of discipline or determination. But if we really dig deeper, we find something much more human, something we all experience: disconnection. When you begin a journey, whether it's launching a business, chasing a fitness goal, starting a new relationship, or building a creative project, the energy at the beginning is undeniable. You're fired up. The idea is fresh, and the possibilities feel endless. It's like standing at the bottom of a mountain and feeling confident that you can climb it, even if the peak is hidden behind clouds. But as the days go by, the excitement fades. The work becomes routine. You run into setbacks, and people don't respond the way you hoped. Maybe the followers don't come, the sales stay flat, or the progress is just painfully slow. And that's where most people begin to lose faith, not just in the goal, but in themselves. They start to question whether the climb is even worth it. Here's the truth: the climb was always going to be hard. Every meaningful pursuit is. But what gives us the strength to keep climbing isn't just talent or motivation. It's purpose. It's the deep, internal reason we started this journey to begin with. And when we lose sight of that reason, everything starts to feel heavier. Think about someone running a marathon. Around mile 20, their body is screaming to stop. The initial adrenaline is long gone. It's not willpower that carries them through those final miles. It's remembering why they're running. Maybe it's for a cause, maybe it's for someone they love, or maybe it's simply to prove something to themselves. That why becomes fuel, not loud, not flashy, but steady. When people quit, it's not because they're incapable. It's because they become disconnected from their purpose. They get caught in the metrics: how many likes, how much money, how fast things are growing. And they forget the spark that made them start in the first place. And here's where it becomes powerful. If you can reconnect with your why, you reignite that spark. You begin to see the setbacks not as signs that you should stop, but as part of the path forward. You stop chasing perfection, and you start showing up with intention. So, the next time you feel like quitting, don't just look at the surface. Don't blame yourself for being tired or discouraged. Take a breath, go back to the beginning. Remember the reason this mattered to you, because it still does. And once you reconnect with that, you'll realize quitting isn't the only option. Sometimes it's just a sign that it's time to remember why you began. When we begin something new, business, a creative project, a fitness journey, it's natural to start by focusing on what we want. We say things like, I want to make $1 million, or I want 1 million followers, or I want to lose 20 pounds. And while there's nothing wrong with having goals, starting with what can be dangerous if it's not connected to something deeper. Because when we only focus on the what, we tie our sense of success to external results, and that makes us incredibly fragile. Here's what happens. You start with excitement. You're chasing the numbers, the metrics, the rewards. You work hard, you put in time, and for a while things feel good. But then the inevitable hits. The results are slow. The growth plateaus. People aren't responding the way you thought they would. And suddenly, all that motivation begins to fade. Why? Because the what hasn't delivered yet. And when you've tied your identity and effort to an outcome that isn't here yet, it's easy to feel like it's not worth it anymore. This is the moment where most people quit. Not because they don't care, but because the thing they were chasing didn't show up on time. And that's the trap of starting with what? It gives you a finish line that might move, or worse, might not come at all, not in the way you expected. It creates a fragile kind of motivation that depends entirely on things outside of your control. Now let's flip it. Imagine instead that you start with why. Not I want to make money, but I want to help people solve a problem. Not I want followers, but I want to create something that inspires others. Not I want to lose weight, but I want to be strong and present for the people I love. That shift, from external to internal, changes everything. Because when the numbers don't show up right away, your purpose still holds. You can keep going even when it's hard because you're not just chasing a result. You're living a belief. Starting with why gives your work meaning, even when no one's watching. It helps you endure the silent seasons, the long stretches without applause or recognition. Because you're not just performing for a finish line. You're building something that matters to you and to the people you're here to serve. It's not that goals are bad, but they should be driven by something deeper. Why is the foundation? Why keeps you steady? Why makes the difference between giving up and showing up? So if you find yourself stuck, burnt out, or ready to throw in the towel, ask yourself, am I only chasing a result, or am I connected to a reason? Because results can fluctuate. But purpose is what endures. Start with why, stay with why, and everything else will have a place to grow. One of the greatest deceptions in the pursuit of success is how invisible progress can be. In a world obsessed with instant gratification and overnight results, we've been conditioned to expect that if we're doing the right things, we should see immediate outcomes. But real growth, lasting, meaningful, transformational growth, is quiet. It's subtle and often it's completely invisible until it suddenly becomes obvious. Think about planting a seed. You water it, place it in sunlight, and check on it the next day. Nothing. A few days later, still nothing. At that point, many people would walk away and assume the seed is dead. But what's happening beneath the surface is everything. Roots are forming. The foundation is being laid. It's just not visible yet. The same is true for your goals, your business, your health, your relationship, anything worth building. Progress starts in the dark. The problem is, we mistake the absence of visible results for the absence of progress. That's simply not true. The early stages of any journey are always the slowest in terms of what you can see. It's the time when you're building habits, learning skills, testing ideas, and showing up even when no one's paying attention. That work may not look impressive on the outside, but it's the most important work you'll ever do, because it's the foundation. We live in a world that celebrates outcomes, but rarely talks about the quiet persistence it takes to get there. We see the viral video, not the 200 that came before it. We admire the successful entrepreneur, but not the sleepless nights and failed launches. We congratulate the person who lost the weight, but ignore the weeks when the scale didn't move at all. And when we compare our slow, silent progress to someone else's highlight reel, we start to believe we're falling behind. But the truth is, invisible progress is still progress. The muscles you don't see yet are growing. The skills you're refining are becoming second nature. The small acts of consistency are stacking, compounding, creating momentum, even when you don't feel it. What separates the people who make it from the ones who quit isn't talent. It's trust. It's the ability to believe in the process even when the results aren't visible. It's the decision to keep showing up, even when it feels like nothing's working. Because something is working. You just haven't seen it yet. So if you're in that place right now, feeling like you're doing everything right but nothing's changing, don't give up. Keep planting, keep watering, keep showing up. The day will come when the results break through the surface. And when they do, they'll seem sudden. But you'll know they weren't. You'll know they were the product of every invisible step you took along the way. Progress is invisible at first, but that doesn't make it any less real. Trust the process. Your breakthrough is building. In a world that craves recognition, applause, and validation, it's easy to tie our efforts to whether or not someone is watching. whether we get likes, comments, praise, or results. But here's the truth: real success doesn't come to those who only perform in the spotlight. It comes to those who keep showing up when the room is empty, when no one is clapping, when no one even knows they're trying. Because what you do in the quiet is what defines you. It's not hard to put in effort when people are watching, when the camera is on, when the crowd is cheering. That's when motivation is high and the energy feels easy. But what about the mornings when no one sees you get up early to work on your craft? What about the nights when you're studying, practicing, building? Alone, that's where the real work happens. That's where character is forged. And that's where most people stop. The reality is, the path to success is filled with long stretches of obscurity. You put in the work and no one notices. You post the content and no one reacts. You offer your product or service and the world doesn't respond the way you hoped. And in those moments, quitting feels not just tempting. It feels logical. Because if no one cares, why bother? But that thinking is a trap. The most successful people in the world, the athletes, the artists, the entrepreneurs, the leaders, they didn't get to where they are because they only showed up when it was easy. They got there because they kept showing up when no one else would. They trained when no one was watching. They created when no one was listening. They believed in their mission before the world ever validated it. There's something powerful about consistency in the dark. When you show up without applause, you're proving to yourself that this isn't about ego, it's about purpose. You're not doing it for recognition, you're doing it because it matters, and that kind of commitment. It's unshakable. Think of it like a sculptor working on a masterpiece. Most of the time, the world doesn't see the hours spent chiseling in solitude. They only see the final statue. But every detail, every cut, every adjustment, it all happened quietly. And that's what makes it beautiful. So if you're showing up every day and it feels like no one notices, don't let that fool you into thinking it doesn't matter. It does. Every repetition, every step, every small effort is laying the groundwork for something bigger. You are preparing yourself for a moment that hasn't arrived yet, but it will, because the people who make it aren't the ones who got lucky. They're the ones who kept going long after the spotlight faded. They did the work in the shadows, and when their moment came, they were ready. So keep going, even when no one sees you, especially when no one sees you, because that's when the real success is being built. There comes a point in almost every journey where you feel tired, discouraged, and unsure if it's even worth continuing. You've put in time, effort, maybe even money. You've shown up, you've tried different strategies, and yet things still don't look the way you hoped they would. And in that moment, the question that creeps in is, should I just quit? But before you make that decision, it's important to pause, not to ask if it's working, but to ask a more powerful question: why did I start? When we begin something new, we're often filled with clarity and energy. We're connected to our mission. Maybe it was a desire to make a difference, to break free from an unfulfilling path, to prove something to ourselves, or to provide a better life for our family. That initial why is usually pure, strong, and emotionally rooted. But over time, we shift our focus. We get caught in the day-to-day grind, the numbers, the lack of results, and we start focusing on the what. What's not happening, what's not working, what others think. And as we drift further from our original why, we lose our sense of direction. Quitting starts to look like a solution, when in reality, it might just be a symptom of disconnection. Reconnecting with your why is like coming up for air after being underwater for too long. It gives you clarity. It reminds you that this isn't just about the outcome. It's about something deeper. It's about the impact, the purpose, the story you're trying to tell with your life. Because let's be honest, anything meaningful is going to get hard. Every worthwhile goal comes with resistance, failure, and setbacks. It's part of the process. And when the resistance hits, your why becomes the anchor that keeps you steady. Without a clear why, obstacles feel like stop signs. With a clear why, they're just speed bumps. Think about people who train for marathons, write books, build companies, or raise families. There are days they don't want to keep going, but they do not because it's easy. but because they're connected to the meaning behind their effort. The same applies to you. If you're ready to quit, don't make that decision based on how things look in the moment. Go back, remind yourself of what lit the fire in you. Maybe you've just forgotten. Maybe life got loud and buried it. That's okay, but find it again. Revisit the reason, write it down, speak it out loud, feel it in your bones again. Because once you remember why you started, you may realize you're not done yet. You just needed a reminder. And sometimes that's all it takes to keep going. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to stay connected. Let your why lead you forward, especially when everything else is trying to pull you back. There's a quiet tragedy that plays out in the lives of so many people, giving up just moments before the breakthrough. Most people don't realize how close they are when they decide to quit. They've been climbing, pushing, sacrificing, enduring, and just when the finish line is around the next corner, they stop. Not because they aren't capable, but because they've lost belief that anything will change. And that's often when everything was about to change. Momentum is a strange thing. It doesn't always look like progress. In fact, sometimes it feels like standing still. You show up every day, you put in the work, and still, nothing seems to be moving. But what you don't see is what's happening underneath. Effort stacks, tiny actions compound, energy builds in the background. It's like water slowly heating to a boil. You don't see the bubbles until suddenly everything erupts. Most people quit right before the boil because the silence of the process is uncomfortable. The results are invisible. You start to think, maybe this just isn't meant for me, or maybe I've done all I can, and those thoughts feel real, even logical. But feelings aren't facts. Sometimes that discouragement is just a sign that you're in the hard part right before it gets good. The doubt you feel isn't a signal to quit. It's a sign that you're doing something that matters. Every success story has a moment of almost quitting. Every person who made it has a chapter they rarely talk about. The part where they were one rejection, one disappointment, or one hard day away from walking away. The part where no one would have blamed them for quitting. The part where it didn't look like it was working, but they held on just a little longer. They stayed in the game just long enough to catch the wave they'd been waiting for. And that's what you need to know. Your next step might be the one that unlocks everything. The next post, the next phone call, the next conversation, the next attempt. It could be the moment that shifts it all. But you'll never know unless you keep going. Persistence isn't glamorous, it's gritty, it's lonely, it's quiet, but it's also where greatness is born. If you're tired, rest. If you're overwhelmed, pause, but don't quit. Not yet. Not when you've already come this far. You didn't make it through everything behind you just to give up before you see what's possible. Because the difference between those who succeed and those who don't isn't talent, luck, or timing. It's the simple, powerful decision to keep going, especially when it would be easier to stop. You might be one more try away from the breakthrough. Don't quit now, not when you're this close.